Today, many of our citizens are still excluded from old age insurance and unemployment compensation because of the nature of their employment. This must be set aright, and it will be. FDR continues to say to the American people, "I am hopeful that on the basis of studies and investigations now underway, the Congress will improve and extend the law. I'm also confident that each year will bring further development in federal and state Social Security legislation. And that is as it should be." One word of warning, however, in our efforts to provide security for all of the American people, let us not allow ourselves to be misled by those who advocate shortcuts to utopia of fantastic financial schemes. We have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. There is still today a frontier that remains unconquered, in America unclaimed. This is the nationwide frontier of insecurity, of human want and fear. This is the frontier, the America we have set ourselves to reclaim. President Franklin D. Roosevelt pioneered Social Security, but recognized that the work was unfinished, even as it related to making sure every single American, regardless of race or position in life, would have Social Security to be able to live out their golden years with grace and dignity. President Franklin D. Roosevelt talked about this frontier that America must continue to pursue, conquering the frontier of insecurity, of human want and fear. That's leadership. That's what we should be doing here in the United States of America, Mr. Speaker, not enacting devastating cuts to health care that will hurt millions of everyday Americans. All of this is also unfolding in an environment where Social Security is now under attack. That's extraordinary to me. Social Security is a sacred promise, a sacred trust between the American people and its stewards, her stewards in government. That's why I'm so thankful for leadership as it relates to Social Security from people like Congressman John Larson, who recognizes that our goals recognizes that leadership is not attacking Social Security. We as House Democrats, led by John Larson, are determined to protect and strengthen Social Security for the American people. Keeping FDR's promise of conquering that frontier of financial insecurity. That's what we should be doing here in the United States Congress, not attacking the social safety net, Mr. Speaker. Many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they constantly call things like Social Security and Medicare entitlement programs. I think they label Social Security and Medicare entitlement programs, and by the way, as a result of this one big ugly bill, Medicare will be cut potentially by more than $500 billion, the largest cut to Medicare in American history, set in motion by Donald Trump's one big ugly bill, and now co-signed, it appears, by House Republicans. Mr. Speaker, House Republicans who've also co-signed this extraordinary assault, making it harder for seniors to access their hard-earned benefits. Social Security is not an entitlement program. Medicare is not an entitlement program, Mr. Speaker. I learned this very early on in life. When I was 15 years old, I secured my first job. I was a messenger traveling from office to office in Midtown Manhattan, delivering mail, delivering packages. I was just a sophomore at Midwood High School in Brooklyn, my first job, earning minimum wage, $3.35 an hour. Thankful for that money, having been raised by my mom and dad in a working class neighborhood in central Brooklyn, $3.35 an hour, coming of age in the middle of the crack cocaine epidemic in central Brooklyn. And I couldn't wait to get my first check. And I was told that because I was working part-time and I was a high school student, that the money that I made would not be taxed. And so as I was anticipating that first check, I multiplied the amount that I was making, $3.35 per hour, by the number of hours that I expected to work during that pay period. I calculated the total, and Mr. Speaker, that money was already spent. I couldn't wait to go to Albee Square Mall in Brooklyn and get some new sneakers so I could look fresh like Run DMC. Money was already spent, Mr. Speaker, because I was told that as a high school student working part-time, my first job, the money that I would make would not be taxed. And then I got my first check. And I had two questions, Mr. Speaker. Who is FICA? And why is he taking my money? You see, Mr. Speaker, what I learned is that every single American, from your first job to every single job that you hold until your last job, pays into Social Security and Medicare through FICA. Social Security and Medicare aren't entitlement programs, they are earned benefits. earned benefits that people work hard for, earn throughout their entire life, and that they deserve. So keep your hands off Social Security and Medicare, the earned benefits of the American people. Hands off these earned benefits. Extraordinary that as a result of this one big ugly bill, Medicare could be cut by more than $500 billion, and these earned benefits of the American people could be jeopardized. Others have noted that because of Donald Trump's one big ugly bill, the insolvency of Social Security and Medicare could be accelerated. This is the exact opposite of that sacred charge that President Franklin D. Roosevelt articulated to the nation as he reflected upon the important first step that was taken with the establishment of Social Security. He's not the only one. This is a great country, an exceptional country. So many examples of what leadership actually looks like. Leadership that we are not seeing right now from the majority in the House of Representatives. Leadership that we did not see on the Republican side of the aisle in the United States Senate in passing this disgusting abomination, and certainly we're not seeing this level of leadership coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But I'm thankful that we have examples of leadership echoing throughout our history that we can reflect upon and be inspired by as we navigate our way through these challenging times. President Truman, from the great state of Missouri, Emanuel Cleaver State, the good Reverend Dr. Emanuel Cleaver, my friend and my mentor, President Truman, shortly after ending World War II, we're so thankful for the sacrifice and the bravery and the courage of the greatest generation. A few months after, he unexpectedly became president, replaced the great FDR. November 19, 1945, he delivered a special message to Congress recommending a comprehensive health program. I want to read just a few of those words because it shows us what leadership actually looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like to have presidential leadership that we in Congress should aspire to working with, as opposed to bending the knee to an extreme agenda reflected in this one big ugly bill. President Truman said to this Congress in a statement recommending a comprehensive health program, millions of our citizens do not now have a full measure of opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. Millions do not now have protection or security against the economic effects of sickness. The time has arrived for action to help them obtain that opportunity and that protection. Truman goes on to say, President Truman goes on to say, our new Economic Bill of Rights should mean health security for all, regardless of residence, station, or race, everywhere in the United States of America. He says, regardless of residence, station, or race, that's presidential leadership. That brings people together, doesn't seek to divide us, which is what unfortunately is happening in the United States of America right now. President Truman goes on to say to Congress, we should resolve now that the health of this nation is a national concern, that financial barriers in the way of attaining health shall be removed, that the health of all its citizens deserves the help of all the nation. Truman goes on to articulate the challenges that exist in America as it relates to illnesses. He articulates several of them, talks about the deficiencies in health care that existed across America, and the fact that in the aftermath of World War II, it was clear that so many people without coverage were medically infirm. And he made clear that's unacceptable in the United States of America. He articulated a forward-looking vision for universal health care, aspirational vision, a vision designed to lift the American people up, not rip health care away from them, which is what this one big, ugly bill will do, ripping health care away for more than 17 million Americans. That's shameful. It disgusts me that we're on the floor of the House of Representatives right now having to push back so aggressively against an all-out assault on the health care of the American people when we should be trying to lift them up in a manner consistent, Mr. Speaker, with what President Truman once charged this Congress with doing. And of course, he wasn't the only one. We're thankful for other leaders who worked with this Congress in prior years to actually advance the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. President Lyndon Baines Johnson, in connection with the Great Society, inspired in part by his own experiences growing up in the hill country of Texas, seeing rural poverty and the devastating impacts of it, something that he was inspired to address, as opposed to this one big, ugly Republican bill that will result in rural hospitals closing in the United States of America. That's not the type of leadership that this country needs, that rural America needs. Thankful that we have examples of the type of leadership that hopefully, Mr. Speaker, we can aspire to achieving in this country. President Lyndon Baines Johnson, in connection with the signing of Medicare and Medicaid, spoke to the American people. He said, "Because the need for this action is plain, and it is so clear indeed that we marvel not simply at the passage of this bill, but what we marvel at is that it took so many years to pass it." And I am so glad that Amy Forand is here to see it finally passed and signed, one of the first authors. There are more than 18 million Americans over the age of 65. Most of them have low incomes. Most of them are threatened by illness and medical expenses that they cannot afford. And through this new law, Mr. President, every citizen will be able, in his productive years, when he is earning, to insure himself against the ravages of illness in his old age. President Johnson was referring to President Harry Truman, who was there at the signing ceremony, having recognized President Truman's vision. He says, and through this new law, Mr. President, every citizen will be able, in his productive years, when he is earning, to insure himself against the ravages of illness in his old age. That was the beauty of Medicare. You pay into it, it's an earned benefit. And you can reap the benefits in your golden years. President Johnson went on to say, this insurance will help pay for care in hospitals, in skilled nursing homes, or in the home. It's ironic. That's what presidential leadership looks like. LBJ says this insurance will help pay for care in hospitals, in skilled nursing homes, or in the home. And yet, Mr. Speaker, we're here 60 years later, and Republicans are trying to jam a budget down the throats of the American people that will close hospitals, close nursing homes, and detonate the ability of millions of people to access home care. That's shameful. It's not the type of leadership that this country needs right now, but that's what we're getting. Chaos, cruelty, and corruption. President Johnson went on to talk about Medicaid, which is the subject of an all-out assault now by this reckless Republican budget, the GOP tax scam, this one big ugly bill. So I want to make sure that the record reflects what enlightened leadership had to say about Medicaid. The benefits under the law are as varied and broad as the marvelous modern medicine itself. If it has a few defects, such as the method of payment of certain specialists, then I'm confident those can be quickly remedied, and I hope they will be. No longer will older Americans be denied the healing miracle of modern medicine. No longer will illness crush and destroy the savings that they have so carefully put away over a lifetime so that they may enjoy dignity in their later years. No longer will young families see their own incomes and their own hopes eaten away. No longer will this nation refuse the hand of justice to those who have given a lifetime of service and wisdom and labor to the progress of this progressive country. Medicare and Medicaid benefit older Americans right now. People who have given a lifetime of service and wisdom and labor to the progress of this progressive country, as LBJ spoke to. And this bill, Mr. President, again, a nod to President Harry Truman, is even broader than that. It will increase Social Security benefits for all of our older Americans. It will improve a wide range of health and medical services for Americans of all ages. And then President Lyndon Baines Johnson leans in on the importance of Medicaid with a greater degree of precision. He says, but there is another tradition that we share today. Calls upon us never to be indifferent toward despair, commands us never to turn away from helplessness. It directs us never to ignore or to spurn those who suffer untended in a land that is bursting with abundance. And this is not just our tradition, or even the tradition of the nation. It is as old as the day it was first commanded. Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, to thy needy in thy land. Is that what we're doing here today in the United States Congress? Opening our hands of grace and compassion and responsibility to our fellow Americans, our fellow citizens? No, that's not what Donald Trump's one big ugly bill is all about. It's an assault on everyday Americans to reward billionaires with massive tax breaks. That's extraordinary. President Clinton, in the 1990s, talked about the Children's Health Insurance Program. Program designed to make sure that children in this country would have access to the medical care they needed to live a life of dignity and respect. And it's extraordinary to me, Mr. Speaker, that in Donald Trump's one big ugly bill, the eligibility for the Children's Health Insurance Program will also be diminished as part of an all-out assault on the health care of the American people. So I thought it not robbery in the time that I have that we lift up the original spirit of the Children's Health Insurance Program. President Clinton said to the nation, because we have acted millions of children across this country will be able to get medicine and have their sight and hearing tested and see dentists and doctors for the first time. Millions of young Americans will be able to go on to college. Millions of Americans not so young will be able to go back to school to get the education and training they need to succeed in life. Millions of families will have more to spend on their own children's needs and upbringing. This budget is an investment in their future and in America's. You see, budgets are moral documents. And in our view, Mr. Speaker, budgets should be designed to lift people up. This reckless Republican budget that we are debating right now on the floor of the House of Representatives tears people down. This reckless Republican budget is an immoral document, and everybody should vote no against it because of how it attacks children and seniors and everyday Americans and people with disabilities. This reckless Republican budget is an immoral document. And that is why I stand here on the floor of the House of Representatives with my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus to stand up and push back against it with everything we have on behalf of the American people. In the spirit of John Lewis, show up, stand up, and speak up for what we know is right. It's an immoral document that we're debating right now on the House of Representatives. This budget also represents an attack on the Affordable Care Act. For some reason, Republicans have been obsessed, Mr. Speaker, with attacking the Affordable Care Act. Gave it a nickname, Obamacare. But the great Jim Clyburn flipped the script and said, yes, it's Obamacare because President Barack Obama cares about the American people, just like we do as House Democrats. That's not what is being reflected right now on the other side of the aisle. We care about the American people. We care about their health. We care about their safety. We care about their well-being. And so I'm proud to stand here on the floor saying, yeah, we're going to continue to defend Obamacare until the very end, no matter what it takes. So President Obama spoke to this Congress as well. He talked about presidential leadership. We've seen it year after year, decade after decade, century after century. President Lincoln, President Roosevelt, President Truman, President Johnson, President Clinton, President Obama lifting up the American people. On the health care issue. So I think it's important that these words as well continue to echo out throughout America. President Obama said that there's still tremendous hardship all across the country. But there is a sense that we are making progress because of you. But even before this crisis, he, of course, speaks about the Great Recession. Even before this crisis, each and every one of us knew that there were millions of Americans across America, millions of people across America who are living their own quiet crises. Maybe because they had a child who had a pre-existing condition. And no matter how desperate they were, no matter what insurance company they called, they couldn't get coverage for that child. Maybe it was somebody who had been forced into early retirement, in their 50s, not yet eligible for Medicare. And they couldn't find a job. And they couldn't find health insurance, despite the fact that they had some sort of chronic condition that had to be tended to. And now we're on the threshold of doing something about it, he said to the United States Congress, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and others who were great partners in this effort. He said, and now we're on the threshold of doing something about it. We're a day away. This is aspirational leadership. After a year of debate, after every argument has been made by just about everybody, we're 24 hours away. But it may also be possible, referring to his critics that existed at the time, who sat on the other side of the aisle. He said, but it may also be possible that they realize after health reform passes and I sign that legislation into law, that it's going to be a little harder to mischaracterize what this effort has been all about. Because this year, small businesses will start getting tax credits so that they can offer health insurance to employees who currently don't have it. Because this year, those same parents who are worried about getting coverage for their children with pre-existing conditions now are assured that insurance companies have to give them coverage this year. Because this year, insurance companies won't suddenly be able to drop your coverage when you get sick, or impose lifetime limits or restrictive limits on the coverage that you have. President Obama went on to say, maybe they know that this year, for the first time, young people will be able to stay on their parents' health insurance until they're 26 years old. The Affordable Care Act was a tremendous step in the right direction. It's aspirational leadership. Tens of millions of Americans now have health insurance coverage as a result of the Affordable Care Act. But this reckless Republican budget, this one big, ugly bill that President Donald Trump has directed my Republican colleagues to sign off on, to recklessly rubber stamp, and to bend the knee to, even though this bill and its assault on health care, on Medicaid, on the Children's Health Insurance Program, on Medicare, and on Obamacare will rip away health care coverage from the people my Republican colleagues are here in Washington to represent. It's extraordinary to me that as a result of this one big ugly bill, this all-out assault on health care in this country, millions of people are going to lose coverage, thrown off of health care, set in motion a chain of events where hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, people unable to get the care that they need to live a life of dignity and respect. And that as a result of the all-out Republican assault on health care in the United States of America, people will die. Tens of thousands, perhaps year after year after year, as a result of the Republican assault on the health care of the American people. I'm sad. I never thought that I'd be on the House floor saying that this is a crime scene. And House Democrats want no part of it. No part of it. It's a crime scene going after the health and the safety and the well-being of the American people. And Mr. Speaker, we want no part of it, which is why we're fighting so hard to stop it. Serving in the United States Congress on this glorious floor, having to be part of a crime scene. Shameful. All-out assault on the American people. President Biden worked hard with many of the people in this Congress who still serve to try to build upon this great legacy, this journey that we've been on, set in motion in modern American presidential history by FDR, inspired by the great vision of President Truman, enhanced in years that were cut short far too early by President Kennedy, and then powered in such an extraordinary way by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Built upon aspirationally by President Jimmy Carter. And then advanced the Children's Health Insurance Program by President Bill Clinton. Furthered in such an extraordinary way by President Barack Obama. And then built upon and enhanced by President Biden. None of us are perfect, but that's part of our march toward a more perfect union. That's part of the charge that we have as public servants, given that sacred charge in the preamble of the United States Constitution. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, leadership that tries to perfect the American journey. President Biden spoke to this in August of 2022, talked about the challenges, pushing back against special interests that are often the forces trying to stop progress on behalf of the American people. This one big, ugly bill is filled with giveaways to special interests. Here in Washington, D.C., I'm disgusted by that. It's not what lawmaking should be about. President Biden, reflecting upon the challenges of making progress on behalf of the American people, says in August of 2022, and yet we've not wavered. We've not flinched. We've not given in. Instead, we're delivering results for the American people. We didn't tear down. We built up. We didn't look back. We looked forward. This law that I'm about to sign finally delivers on a promise that Washington has made for decades to the American people. Guess what? We're giving Medicare the power to negotiate. The power to negotiate lower prices on behalf of the American people. This means seniors, President Biden goes on to say, are going to pay less for their prescription drugs, while we're changing circumstances for people on Medicare by putting a cap of a maximum of $2,000 per year on their prescription drug costs, no matter what the reason for those prescriptions are. That means if you're on Medicare, you'll never have to pay more than $2,000 a year. No matter how many prescriptions you have, whether it's for cancer or any other disease, no more than $2,000 a year. I don't care who in this town is trying to take credit for something accomplished by others. President Joseph Robinette Biden did that. He did that. He did that as part of our effort to lower costs on behalf of the American people. None of us are perfect. There's still work to do. But the 46th President of the United States of America did that. Inflation Reduction Act, he went on to say, locks in lower health care premiums for millions of families who get their coverage under the Affordable Care Act. Last year, a family of four saved on average $2,400 through the American Rescue Plan that I signed into law that Congress voted in place. President Biden's talking about the continuation of our march toward a more perfect union, the work that we in this Congress, many of us who had the privilege to serve over the last few years, did to try to expand and strengthen the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, by enhancing the premium tax credits available so that millions of additional Americans would actually have the ability to get access to health care. And in this one big, ugly bill, Republicans are setting in motion the explosion of those tax credits that are designed to provide affordable health care coverage to the American people. Leadership requires courage, conviction, compassion. And yet what we've seen from this administration and its co-conspirators on the Republican side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, is cruelty, chaos, and corruption. And it's all been morphed into a toxic mix now contained in Donald Trump's one big ugly bill. An extraordinary assault on the health care of the American people. I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, that I've taken to the House floor to share stories from the American people. Stories that are too numerous to articulate in the time available to us in connection with debating this bill. But I'm going to do my best to make sure that we have a representative sample of why so many Americans all across this country went to bed in fear and are now waking up in horror because Republicans are trying to jam this one big ugly bill down the throats of the American people. An assault on health care, an assault on nutritional assistance, an assault on children, an assault on veterans, an assault on farmers, an assault on everyday Americans. Crystal, who's also from the great state of Alaska, said that after my husband passed away suddenly, I was unprepared to pay all the bills as a part-time stay-at-home mom, and working part-time while my young girls were in school. I applied for SNAP benefits,